The Devil and Us, a memoir of you and me. Everything you think you know about evil is wrong. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's Thursday, the 18th of April, 9:16 p.m. Mountain Time, which is my time. And I wanted to lay down a few words on a topic that has been contemplatively swimming through the waters of my consciousness and doesn't want to see any more of the ocean. It's hanging around me. So I need to get these things out when this happens. It's a little bit like a thought fox, you know? So there's an incredible poverty of language as it pertains to consciousness and the experience of consciousness and the metrics of the evolution of consciousness. And this poverty of language is specifically in the West, although there is a lexicon over here that is used for certain things. I'd say that's Kabbalistic. It's the true lexicon of consciousness in the West is Kabbalistic. Okay. In the East, they have a number of systems, okay? The documentation systems. Ayurvedic yoga is the encyclopedia of consciousness and every system in a human body, the nervous system, the blood system, everything. It's like an entire compendium of the human experience in four levels of consciousness up to cosmic consciousness, you know, physical, astral, causal, and mental, which is my definition of cosmic consciousness, which is really what this show is about today, which is the language of things, you know, and why is there such a poverty of language? And sometimes I'm just sort of intuitively directed to see something. This is one of the benefits of a fluid consciousness and a consciousness that's open, a consciousness that is available to creativity. And not everybody is, okay? Creativity is a human right. It's a birthright, okay? I see it exemplified where I live. You know, the way people MacGyver things to solve problems in a remote area, both the campesinos I live with and the natives further up the road or further into the jungle. You can see things when you're visiting these people that are just make you think for a moment, like, what is that? What's it doing? And then when you figure out what it's doing, you just have to remark at notice how remarkable the novelty of it is. And this could be something as simple as a bush shower, okay? Like a shower built in the jungle or at a wood shack where there's no city water lines, you know, and the water's brought in from a mountain stream or caught from rain or something like this. Very simple stuff. But what's astounding about it, especially if you come from a culture that has been thoroughly departmentalized, and we have been thoroughly departmentalized in the West, okay? There's no doubt about this. And it's a compartmentalized consciousness in which you are encouraged to specialize in something. Whereas when you live by self-reliance, the natural tendency to go is to go the opposite direction and become a generalist. Okay? And a generalist is somebody who can do a lot of things to an acceptable standard of competence. It may not be professional, but the money they're saving themselves by doing it themselves is well worth the investment of time to learn. Everybody I live with up here can fix any small motor. I remember being up on the reserve one time and watching them take apart a Husqvarna chainsaw. And they knew every part of the chainsaw. And they never saw a repair manual. I can guarantee you that. This is knowledge passed on from when the chainsaw first entered into tribal life, which was probably about 50 years ago, maybe 40, between 40 and 50 years ago. Not a long time, right? You're talking about like 1970, 1974, maybe 1984. But the people who first engaged them encountered the problem of them breaking and encountered the problem of fixing them. And this necessitated a rudimentary tool set, which prior to that, I suspect had not been on the reserve. Why would you need fine screwdrivers unless you're taking apart a small engine? So it's little stuff like that that amazes me, because I would, if, you know, I was a chainsaw guy in Canada. I actually had a Stihl chainsaw. I grew up cutting wood for a wood burning stove in our home. We had to go cut wood every Sunday out at a farmer's field. We had a contract to clear all the dead trees from his land. He had, I think, 400 or 500 acres. That's what we called it back then. Nobody, we would call it hectares now because everything's gone to the metric system, but that back then we called it acres. And I mean, if I own a $500 or a $1,500 chainsaw, and some of the larger chainsaws can go 1,500, like the 90cc. I mean, you could run a motorcycle off that easy. And the arms on these chainsaws in Central America are absurdly long, over 40 inches. The trees they have to cut through sometime are, you know, the circumference could be 30 feet. Diameter could be 10, 15 feet. You may think I'm exaggerating. I've been on the highway over here and been behind an 18-wheeler that has a single log on it. So the entire space of the open bed with the metal arms coming up, that's the way they haul wood. It doesn't fit into a box. So it sits on the bed of an 18-wheel truck, and it's got to be bordered by metal posts coming up, and then it's subsequently tied off. So I've been behind trucks where they're carrying a single log. Okay, so maybe 30-foot long, and the entire width of the truck and as high as the cabin and maybe higher. It's quite a sight to see. I mean, I don't think it would dazzle people who come from California and who have seen the redwoods. But if you haven't seen that, then what you see over here with wood is kind of amazing. This is what I call a walkabout podcast. And this occurs when I just come in with a general idea and I do an abstract painting verbally. So let's get back on track. We were talking about generalists versus specialists. We were talking about the impoverishment of language as it pertains to proper use of words. Okay. So for this particular podcast, what I want to do is I want to focus on matter and spirit and materialism and spirituality. Okay. Now it's important that these terms be understood because they're profoundly interlinked. Okay. So matter is a form of spirit in a very slowed down form, almost frozen form. So if we were to make the analogy, the metaphor that, you know, spirit is water, then matter is the frozen state. Okay, but we're not really frozen here because we have cellular division and we're growing and we heal our bodies when we're young. Immune system does all that. So it's not really a one-to-one analogy, but you get what I'm saying. Matter is, in fact, a form of spirit. Okay? It is a form of spirit, or matter clothes spirit. Matter is a suit that is created for spirit to step into, to get dressed in, to have an experience, to have a lifetime. We come into these bodies. So that begs the question, what is spirit? You know, and there's a lot of permeations on this. In Christianity, we get the concept of the Holy Spirit. Now, the Bible gives characteristics of the presence of the Holy Spirit, affectations, if you will. So when the Holy Spirit is in you, you will feel a generosity, you will feel a connectedness to other things, you'll feel a benevolence, a compassion, okay? All of these things, but it's very, very amorphous, okay? It's extremely amorphous. You couldn't put it into the American Diagnostic Manual. Spirit, the feeling of benevolence and connect. No, it's not concrete enough. It's not a properly formed noun. A noun is a person, place, or thing. Okay, under thing, under every one of these things, there are sub brackets. Person and place, it's more of just whether it's a proper noun or a common noun. But under thing, there are many subcategories. Okay, person, place, a concept is a thing, right? So the noun doesn't necessarily have to be material. It doesn't have to be manifest. It could be a concept. Okay. So what is the noun definition of spirit? Well, as a general exercise, why don't we just look this up? Because this is going to be, I suspect, quite fascinating. Spirit definition. The non-physical part of a person, which is the seat of emotions and character, the soul. We seek a harmony between body and spirit. Okay, so I don't think that's a valid definition, and I'll tell you why. Because it concatenates two spiritual words into one thing. It says that the soul and the spirit are the same thing. Why would they do that? If that's true, why do we need the two words? And, are they given that this is the Oxford Languages Dictionary, given that they're concatenating two words of, let's call it an antiquated lexicon, language that's been part of the human experience since the inception of language or shortly after it. Soul and spirit would be two of the things a tribe would define very, very quickly, like in the first few generations of using language. Otherwise, what's the point of language? What is the limit of your cosmology? How do you transfer mythologies? When you look at the complex mythologies coming out of even native culture, the Hopi, the Mayan, the Quebecer I live with up here, those are complex language structures. Okay? They're using language, they're using noun language that has non-material form. Okay? This is why the two bookends, matter and spirit, are so important. And language, how do you create a language that joins those two things? So the language of spirit is as manifest and concrete as the material. It's very difficult to do. You could say maybe this is a barroom definition of the trade of philosophy. And philosophy is a trade, and it probably did originate in barrooms. As soon as they started squeezing grapes, I'll bet you philosophers came about, right? And you know why? People would buy you drinks to philosophize. Very simple to understand. So you got matter and you got spirit. Matter is very simple, okay? Let's get the definition and it'll be completely non-ambiguous. Wait and see. Matter definition. It's a noun, again from Oxford Languages. It's a physical substance in general, as distinct from mind and spirit. In physics, that which occupies space and possesses rest mass, especially as distinct from energy. That's a very clear definition, much more clear than spirit, right? So what is spirit if it lives inside of us? So in some of these podcasts I've done, and in talking about the devil, and I'm not addressing the book today, but I've talked about these amorphous concepts. I've talked about these Very, very ambiguous concepts. Okay? And many of them exist in a spiritual context. So what is spirit? It's non-physical, so we have the imagination. What is spirit? So if I tell you to imagine a German Shepherd now, if you have the ability to see, okay? Not everybody does. And if you don't worry about it. You can stimulate the imagination. You can awaken the imagination, okay? It's very easy. It's done by spending time in stillness and silence. Basically, the underwriting of any spiritual exercise, stillness and silence. Practice those two things, okay? And when you practice those things, you begin to engage your consciousness. And then ultimately, you want to shut down your senses, which is generally done by shutting your eyes and focusing on your forehead from the inside, okay? Like going to a movie theater. So I say, imagine a German Shepherd, okay? See its black and caramel colored fur, light brown fur. See its eyes. Can you see its eyes? It's happy. The eyes are very dark on that breed of dog, okay? See the tongue. He's breathing. He's perspiring. He's got his tongue out. He's sitting on his back legs. His front legs are in front of him. He's happy to see you. He's relaxed, but his tongue is out. Just look at him, okay? Now, where'd you get the light to create that image? Where'd you get the context? What's the background you're looking at? Is the German Shepherd, does your memory take over? Do you immediately default to a German Shepherd you knew? Or can you legitimately visualize a German Shepherd? And if you visualize it, what's the background? When I visualized it, it was sitting in blackness. I just pulled it out of darkness and I said, okay, here's a German Shepherd, and it's illuminated in my mind's eye. See its eyes, I can feel a bit of its personality. What's your context? And what is the light that sustains that internal image? What is the light in the process that sustains a dream? Okay, you see things in a dream. To see anything, you have to have light. It gets very dark out here in the rainforest at night. Pitch black out here, okay? And if there's clouds, it's just as black as you can. I can't get from the front house to the back house without a flashlight, okay? I sleep in the back house. So to see anything, you need light. So is that what they mean by inner light in spiritual doctrine? The ability to imagine things? I don't know. Why hasn't anybody simplified it? Why hasn't Sadhguru told us? Why hasn't the Catholic Church told us? Why haven't the Kabbalists told us? I don't know. There seems to be like a hesitation in this field to come forward and speak openly and share it like other sciences are shared. And spirituality, at the end of the day, is a science. It's achieved through continuous experimentation and repetition, the effects of it. Now, what differs it from other sciences is the proofs are non-transferable. And why is that? Because the proofs take place in spirit. They take place inside of you. Now, those truths can translate out into your outer world. You know, I did a podcast last week on synchronicities. Okay? Now, that synchronicity I described coming back from the reserve was nearly miraculous. That is an A plus synchronicity. You could not make that up. I'm literally being told the story of the Serpent King on March 13th while looking at a native burial ground and being told there's gold there and it has to be guarded because roughnecks in Central America want that gold. Narco traffickers with sicarios working for them want that gold. I come home, a Netflix series was released the day I was being told the story on the reserve. It's the exact same story. People looking for the Serpent King's gold in the Maya Riviera, Central America. Amazing. You can't make it up. You could run those details into a probability matrix, and there would be no probability matrix. Not a trillion to one, not a quadrillion to one. It is just one of those events, 3 repeating, 3.333. That is a living synchronicity. And it's a living synchronicity because it's a gap in the geometric construction of this reality that allows adverse events in, as does 6 repeating, as does 9 repeating. Okay? So what's spirit and what's matter? Well, matter is the easy one. So spirit is fundamentally internal light. But internal light is itself derivative. It's not a primary thing. It's derived from something else. Remember, the theory or the philosophy of spirituality in all higher paths is that everything goes back to one thing. So is light the one thing? No, it itself is derivative. Okay? So in the outer world, the fastest moving thing that we can measure is light. In the inner world, sound is more dominant than light. In the beginning was the word. And light is a form of sound. Because what is sound? It's a vibration. Everything is vibrating. This microphone is vibrating. Every cell in my body is vibrating right now. So if everything is vibrating and sound is a vibration, everything is an audible experience, including light. Okay? Including light. I often talk about the unbelievably transformative power of living in a natural soundscape like the rain jungle. And everybody who comes up here and lives with me for a few months or visits, even for 2 or 3 weeks, they pick up on it. It's the sounds. You're constantly being bombarded by natural sounds, whether it's crickets and night birds at night and other forms of insects that sing in a kind of chorus. You can also very often at night get a chorus of toads and a chorus of frogs simultaneously. And the toads are like the base, and we got the big toads here. The one, I've actually been told that these are the toads you can use as a psychedelic experience. I myself have not licked a toad up here, but I'm sure there would be people who might come to visit me in the future who know how to do it and may do it because it's in abundance here. And then you've got frogs, okay? And there's frogs everywhere up here, everywhere, many types of frogs, the rainforest is just full of them. And there's this idea that frogs were going away, and maybe they have in certain environments. And the reason is of their vulnerability because they breathe through their skin. So I definitely know that from when I was growing up. I was born in 66. I remember frogs growing up, 8, 9 years old in the early 70s. You go to a pond, there's just an endless supply of frogs. As I got older in my 40s and 50s, it was very hard to find a frog in Canada. Very hard to find a frog or even a toad. Not an easy thing. Up here, they're everywhere, everywhere. And you can hear them. You can hear them. Okay? So that's the definition of spirit. It's fundamentally sound and light, but sound is the principle. Now let's go back to the other spectrum, matter. And let's take a derivative of that word, materialism. Let's define it because we don't want to go off track here. Materialism, definition. So again, Oxford Languages, it seems to materialism, a tendency to consider material possessions and physical comfort as more important than spiritual values. They hated the sinful materialism of the wicked city. there's a philosophical definition, but I'm not gonna dignify it. So that is not the definition of materialism. Why would that be the definition of materialism? We already have greed, we have cupidity. Why do we need another word? Why do we have to say materialism? And why corrupt the word material? And you notice how they use it in context to spiritual. So again, it's this constant allusion to mammon, mammon. No. Materialism is to make material. Simply. Science is the greatest form of materialism on this planet. Look at all the things we have materialized. Cities, roads, automobiles, telephone posts, computers, cell phones. This is material, to make material. So to materialize, let's use that. It's more of a science fiction dimension to the word, materialize. So what do you see? You see Spock and Kirk materializing on a planet as they went through the transporter. They materialize, they become matter. So materialism is the affection for materializing. It's got nothing to do with money. There's way too much materialism on this planet. Okay? Now, let's bring it back to the spiritual discourse. Everything we seek is valid and true. For example, there's a tremendous fascination with space now. Why? Why? Why do people want to go into space? But more importantly, why do they want to do it materially? In a ship, in a spacesuit, in some form of physical transportation. You see, the human being, through consciousness, has always had the ability to go into space. We can leave in our thoughts and in our perception. We can literally leave our bodies and go other places. Goes by many names. Meditation is just the simple name for it. It's not all just sitting there and breathing. At a certain point, when you go into samadhi, the energy comes out, you pop out of your body, and you're in this dreamscape of hyper fast imagination, like a tunnel of possibilities. And then you stabilize somewhere and you have an experience. And off again, you go somewhere else. And you can do this for almost unlimited periods of time. Okay? Unlimited periods of time. A highly evolved meditation master living within the culture of meditation, in a monastery, that would be, the abbot could easily sit down and not move for 10 days in a single sitting of meditation. 10 days. No bathroom breaks, no water, no food. Where are they? Do you think they're just sitting there in their body, listening to their breathing? No. So what is materialism? It is to make things material. CERN. Okay? CERN is an incredibly arrogant form of materialism because it risks so much for something the human race can already do innately. And so the question, or the final summation of this podcast tonight, is how did we arrive at a point where we always choose the material over the spiritual? And everybody's doing it now. The Indians are fascinated with this materialism in science now. The Arabic world is fascinated with it. They haven't caught on that this is materialism. It's not just a Western affliction. And it's got so much gravitas because it's material. It's material. And the sorcerers of our time are the people who can materialize and sustain this reality for us. But it's theirs. This is why you don't have any rights in it. Because it's their reality. They created it. They materialized it. Do you understand? The Babylonian system is patented. You have to pay your dues if you want to live in it. It's that simple. I'm Bruce McDonald, and this has been the Telemaker Review.